By the time I walked into the restaurant, the celebration was already over. My parents' anniversary dinner had ended. Empty dessert plates covered the table, wine glasses were half full, and everyone looked relaxed as if they'd been sitting there for hours. The moment my mother saw me, she smiled. "Oh, there you are." Then she slid the leather bill folder toward me. "You don't mind covering dinner, do you? Consider it our anniversary gift." My younger sister, Natalie, burst into laughter. "Honestly, Emma, you're still as clueless as ever. How could you be late to Mom and Dad's anniversary?" I looked around the table. My father avoided my eyes. My brother-in-law suddenly became very interested in his phone. Something didn't feel right. I pulled out my phone and opened the message Mom had sent me. Saturday, 8:30 p.m. Then I glanced at the reservation card still sitting on the table. Reservation time, 6 p.m. For a moment, nobody spoke. I slowly looked back at my mother. "You invited me 2.5 hours after the reservation started." Natalie crossed her arms. "So what? You still should have been here." I smiled politely. "No, I arrived exactly when you told me to." The smile disappeared from her face. The waiter walked over. "Will this be one bill?" Before anyone could answer, Mom pointed at me. "My daughter is paying." The waiter nodded and handed me the check. I opened it. $2,846.73, a private anniversary dinner for 8 people, including premium wine, steak, seafood, and desserts I had never even seen. I quietly closed the folder, then looked at the restaurant manager standing near the front desk. "I'd like to speak with you for just a moment." For the first time that evening, my family stopped smiling. The manager introduced himself as Mr. Delgado. He greeted me politely. "Is there a problem with your bill?" "There might be." I showed him the message on my phone. "This is the invitation my mother sent me." He read it carefully, then compared it to the reservation in his system. His eyebrows lifted. The reservation was for 6 o'clock. Yes, I was invited for 8:30. He looked toward my family, then back at me. "I'm sorry, but that means the dinner was almost finished before you even arrived." "Exactly." He remained silent for a moment, then quietly asked, "May I see the reservation notes?" He opened the file. There was a handwritten instruction. "Please do not seat our last guest until she arrives. She'll be paying the bill." Mr. Delgado looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I'm very sorry. I didn't know." "Neither did I," he lowered his voice. "Who made this reservation?" "My mother." He nodded slowly. "I'll be right back." As he walked toward the table, I stayed where I was. I wasn't angry anymore. I was curious, because someone had planned this, very carefully, and I wanted to know how far they were willing to go. Mr. Delgado returned to the table carrying the reservation file. He placed it beside the bill. "I just need to confirm one detail." Mom smiled confidently. "Of course. You requested that your daughter be billed for tonight's dinner." "That's right. You also asked us not to mention the reservation time." Her smile faded. "I don't remember saying that." Mr. Delgado calmly turned the reservation form around. "Your signature is here." The entire table fell silent. Natalie tried to laugh it off. "Oh, come on, it's just a family joke." I looked at my father. He still hadn't spoken, not once. "Dad, did you know?" He slowly closed his eyes, then whispered, "Yes." One word. That was all it took. My stomach dropped. He had known from the beginning. Mom quickly interrupted. "It wasn't a big deal. We thought you'd be happy to treat us." I looked around the table. 8 adults. Every one of them had eaten. Every one of them had watched me walk in believing I'd join the celebration. Instead, they handed me a bill for a meal I had never shared. Mr. Delgado broke the silence. "Ma'am, I don't believe it's appropriate to require payment from someone who wasn't present for the service." Mom's face changed instantly. "So you're refusing to charge her?" He shook his head. "I'm saying the responsibility belongs to the people who ordered and consumed the meal." For the first time all evening, my mother looked nervous. Then the manager added something that made everyone's expression change. "I've also reviewed your reservation history, and there's something you should probably explain." The dining room had gone completely quiet. My mother tried to smile, but it looked forced now. "What exactly are you talking about?" Mr. Delgado opened the reservation history on his tablet and turned it toward her. "I remember your family because you've celebrated several occasions here." He scrolled through the records. "Your husband's retirement dinner, your birthday, your granddaughter's baptism." Then he stopped. "Each reservation includes the same note." He read it aloud. "Seat Miss Emma separately if she arrives early. Present the final bill to her before anyone else has a chance to pay." I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't an impulsive prank. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. I looked at my father. How many times? He lowered his head. More than I should have allowed. Natalie rolled her eyes. Oh, stop acting like a victim. You make more money than everyone else. I turned toward her. So you decided that made me your family's wallet? She didn't answer, because she couldn't. Mr. Delgado quietly added another detail. There's something else. The reservation notes specifically requested that no prices appear on the table until Miss Emma arrived. Mom's face lost all color. She knew exactly why. If the bill had been visible from the beginning, someone else might have offered to pay. They never intended to give anyone that chance. They intended for me to walk into a finished dinner and feel too embarrassed to refuse. But they had miscalculated. This time someone outside the family had witnessed everything, and that changed the rules completely. As the manager stepped away to print something, a waitress approached our table. She looked at me for a second, then recognition crossed her face. I remember you, I smiled politely. I've only been here once before. She nodded. It was your birthday. My stomach dropped. My birthday, 2 years earlier. She looked uncomfortable. I shouldn't interfere, but I always felt bad about that night. I frowned. What happened? She hesitated before answering. You arrived almost an hour late. I wasn't late, I said quietly. My invitation said 7:30. She looked surprised. The reservation started at 6. My heart sank again. She continued. Your family ordered before you arrived. They told us not to call you because you were always late. I remembered that night. Everyone had teased me for missing the appetizers. Mom had laughed. Natalie had joked that I couldn't even arrive on time for my own birthday dinner. I had apologized over and over. Now I finally understood. I hadn't been late. I'd been set up. The waitress reached into her apron. I've kept something ever since. She handed me a folded receipt. It was the payment slip from my birthday. My signature was at the bottom. I had paid for my own surprise birthday dinner. For everyone. Including the cake I never got to see because they'd already cut it before I arrived. I folded the receipt carefully. Years of confusion suddenly made perfect sense. This wasn't about one anniversary dinner. It had been happening for years. As the manager stepped away to print something, a waitress approached our table. She looked at me for a second, then recognition crossed her face. I remember you, I smiled politely. I've only been here once before. She nodded. It was your birthday. My stomach dropped. My birthday, 2 years earlier. She looked uncomfortable. I shouldn't interfere, but I always felt bad about that night. I frowned. What happened? She hesitated before answering. You arrived almost an hour late. I wasn't late, I said quietly. My invitation said 7:30. She looked surprised. The reservation started at 6. My heart sank again. She continued. Your family ordered before you arrived. They told us not to call you because you were always late. I remembered that night. Everyone had teased me for missing the appetizers. Mom had laughed. Natalie had joked that I couldn't even arrive on time for my own birthday dinner. I had apologized over and over. Now I finally understood. I hadn't been late. I'd been set up. The waitress reached into her apron. I've kept something ever since. She handed me a folded receipt. It was the payment slip from my birthday. My signature was at the bottom. I had paid for my own surprise birthday dinner. For everyone. Including the cake I never got to see because they'd already cut it before I arrived. I folded the receipt carefully. Years of confusion suddenly made perfect sense. This wasn't about one anniversary dinner. It had been happening for years. I looked at Mr. Delgado. Can you do me a favor? Of course. I'd like copies of every dinner my family charged to me. He nodded. It may take a few minutes. While he printed the records, nobody at the table spoke. Mom kept staring at the tablecloth. Natalie folded her arms. Dad looked like he wanted to disappear. 10 minutes later, the manager returned carrying a thick envelope. There are 7 receipts. 7, I opened the first one, my birthday. The second, Dad's retirement dinner. The third, Mom's 65th birthday. Then Christmas, Mother's Day, Natalie's promotion dinner. And tonight, every single receipt had my signature. Every single reservation included instructions to bill me. The total was just over $14,000. I slowly closed the envelope, then looked at my family. I always thought I was being generous, but generosity requires a choice. You never gave me one. I stood up and picked up my handbag. Mom finally spoke. Emma, where are you going? I looked at her calmly. To stop paying for people who only invite me after dessert. I started walking toward the exit. Then Mr. Delgado called after me. Miss Emma, there's one more thing. I found the person who made every single reservation. I turned around, because according to every reservation form, it wasn't my mother. It was someone else. I turned back toward the manager. The reservations weren't made by your mother, Mr. Delgado said. They were made online, but every booking listed the same contact number. He handed me a printed copy. I stared at the number. It wasn't Mom's. It wasn't mine. It belonged to Natalie. My sister had organized every dinner, every birthday, every holiday meal, every celebration where I somehow arrived late. She had carefully chosen the reservation times, then sent me a different time so I would never see the beginning of the meal. By the time I walked in, everyone had already eaten, and I was left holding the bill. I looked at her. So this was your idea? Natalie didn't deny it. She folded her arms and said, "You could afford it, we couldn't." Dad finally stood up. "That's enough." His voice was shaking. I knew about the dinners, but I never knew Natalie was changing the invitation times. Mom stared at him in disbelief. "You knew?" He nodded slowly. "I thought Emma volunteered to pay." Then he looked at me. "I'm sorry, I should have asked questions instead of making assumptions." It was the first genuine apology I'd heard all night, but it came years too late. I picked up the envelope containing every receipt. "I'm done." As I walked toward the exit, Natalie shouted after me, "You'll regret making such a big deal over a few dinners." I stopped without turning around. "No, Natalie. You'll regret treating kindness like an unlimited credit card." I walked out, but I wasn't going home. There was one more place I needed to visit, and it would change everything. The next morning, I met Dad at a quiet coffee shop. He looked exhausted. He placed a small envelope on the table. "I found this while cleaning my office. It was addressed to you." I looked at the handwriting. It was from Grandma. She had passed away 6 months earlier. "I never opened it," Dad said. "She told me to give it to you personally, but after she died, I couldn't bring myself to do it." Inside was a short letter. "Emma, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I noticed something years ago that no one else seemed willing to admit. Your kindness has become the family's habit, not their blessing. Never confuse love with obligation. The day people expect your generosity instead of appreciating it is the day you must protect your peace." A second document slipped from the envelope. It was Grandma's will. She had left me a small lakeside cottage she owned. Dad looked surprised. I didn't even know she'd changed her will. I smiled through tears. "It isn't about the cottage. It's about the fact that someone finally saw what was happening." For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. 6 months later, Mom called. Her voice sounded different, quieter. "We're celebrating your father's birthday." I smiled. "I hope you have a wonderful evening." There was a long pause. "Aren't you coming?" I wasn't invited. "Of course you were." "No, Mom, you told me the date. You never told me the restaurant." Silence. Then she whispered, "I forgot." I laughed softly. "No, you remembered. You just expected me to chase the invitation like I always did." That evening, I stayed at my lakeside cottage with a cup of coffee, watching the sunset. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang again. It was Dad. "You were right." "What happened?" "The restaurant wouldn't let us leave until someone paid." I couldn't help smiling. "And who paid?" After a long silence, he answered, "We all did." Everyone split the bill equally. For the first time in years, no one looked around the table expecting me to rescue them. A week later, Mom visited me alone. She didn't bring excuses. She didn't ask for money. She simply said, "I spent years thinking your generosity was automatic. I forgot it was a gift." I nodded. "That's the difference. A gift is freely given. It isn't something you quietly take." She cried. I forgave her, not because she'd earned it, but because I refused to carry their choices for the rest of my life. Natalie never apologized. She never admitted she was wrong, but she never sent another fake invitation either. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's as simple as people finally paying for the lives they've been living. And for me, the greatest revenge wasn't making them feel embarrassed. It was realizing that my kindness had value. And from that day forward, no one would ever spend it without my permission.